The soft hum of the artificial sunrise filled the research habitat on Titan. The lights flickered to life, casting a warm glow over the sleek metal walls. Dr. Adrian Voss stretched with a groggy sigh, his muscles aching from another long night of research. His work with the Z-Theory species was groundbreaking. Never before had a human and an alien coexisted in such close quarters for so long. He shuffled toward the small kitchen unit, rubbing his eyes. His mind was foggy, sluggish, desperate for one thing. He pressed a button on the coffee machine. A rich, dark aroma filled the air as the machine hissed and dripped the lifeblood of human mornings into his mug. Adrian lifted the steaming cup and took his first sip. Bliss. Warmth spread through his body, his thoughts sharpening almost instantly. Then came the scream. A sharp, horrified gasp shattered the morning peace. Adrian nearly choked on his coffee as Kalari, his Z-Theory research partner, bolted into the room, her large violet eyes wide with shock. Her bioluminescent tendrils pulsed erratically in alarm, and her silver-blue skin shimmered under the artificial lights. She took a step back, her elongated fingers clutching the edge of the doorway. What is that smell?" she demanded, her voice a mixture of disbelief and terror. Adrian blinked at her, then down at his cup. Coffee." Kalari's mandibles twitched in horror. "You drink this poison every morning." Adrian frowned. "Poison?" He swirled the dark liquid in his cup, raising an eyebrow. "It's just coffee. Keeps me awake. You know, caffeine." Kalari took another step back, her body tense, as if Adrian was holding a vial of pure death. "Caffeine," she nearly shrieked. "That's a hyperlethal neurotoxin. A single drop would shut down my nervous system in seconds. How are you still alive?" Adrian paused. He had never really thought about it before. Sure, caffeine was a stimulant, but humans had been drinking it for centuries without issue. He shrugged. "Well, I guess humans can handle it." Kalari's gills flared as she processed this information. But that's impossible," she sputtered. "No species willingly consumes something toxic. Our people carefully filter all harmful substances from our diet. Even the slightest impurity could be fatal. Your body should be rejecting it, not thriving on it." Adrian took another slow sip, watching Kalari's horrified expression. "Well, humans aren't exactly delicate," he said with a smirk. Kalari didn't seem amused. She quickly activated her bioscanner, a sleek device embedded in the cuff of her uniform. It emitted a soft blue light as it scanned the contents of Adrian's cup. Moments later, the screen flashed red with a warning symbol. "Lethal toxicity detected. Immediate disposal recommended." Kalari gawked at the display, then back at Adrian, who was still drinking the poison like it was nothing. "You should be convulsing," she exclaimed. "Your neural pathways should be shutting down." How is this possible?" Adrian chuckled and leaned against the counter. "Maybe humans are just built different." Kalari wasn't sure whether to be impressed or terrified. She had studied human physiology before agreeing to this research partnership, but she had assumed they were a weak species, reliant on technology to survive. Now, she wasn't so sure. If Adrian could casually drink a deadly neurotoxin every morning without flinching, what else could humans endure? For the first time, she wondered if the galactic community had severely underestimated humanity, and that thought sent a shiver down her spine. Kalari paced back and forth in the small research station, her bioluminescent tendrils flickering with agitation. Her mind raced as she replayed the moment over and over. Dr. Adrian Voss had casually consumed a lethal neurotoxin, and he had done it every morning without a second thought. She stole another glance at the steaming cup of black liquid on the counter. Even standing near it made her skin tingle with unease. Her bioscanner had been very clear. The caffeine in that drink was deadly to her species. But Adrian, he had smirked while drinking it, as if it were nothing more than water. "This makes no sense," she muttered under her breath. Adrian, still leaning casually against the counter, took another sip. He let out a satisfied sigh. "You're overreacting," he said, shaking his head. "It's just coffee. Humans have been drinking it for centuries." Kalari whirled around, her silver-blue skin darkening with frustration. "Just coffee," she repeated, incredulous. "Adrian, do you even realize what caffeine does to most life forms? It disrupts neural signals, accelerates heart failure, and—" She waved her scanner at him. "According to every biological standard in the galaxy, you should be unconscious right now." Adrian grinned, amused by her dramatic reaction. "And yet, here I am, awake and feeling great." Kalari narrowed her eyes. "This isn't funny." She pulled up a holographic display filled with medical data, comparing human biology to Zetheri physiology. The more she read, the more disturbed she became. The Zetheri were a species of biological perfectionists. Their bodies filtered out toxins before they could do any harm. Their food was engineered to be nutritionally perfect, and their immune systems were designed to prevent even the smallest contaminant from entering their bloodstream. Because of this, they had never needed to develop resistance to harmful substances. Humans, however, were biological chaos. She scrolled through records of human dietary habits. Capsaicin, a chemical irritant humans willingly consume for spicy food. Ethanol, a literal poison that humans drink for relaxation. Lactic acid, a metabolic byproduct that builds up in muscles, yet humans push through it during exercise. Kalari's jaw tightened. "Your species, you consume poisons constantly. You eat things that burn, drink things that alter brain function, and somehow, instead of dying, you adapt." Adrian chuckled. "Sounds about right." Kalari stared at him. "This isn't normal, Adrian." He shrugged. "For humans, it is." She exhaled sharply, rubbing her temples. "Do you have any idea how fragile the Zetheri are? If I consumed even a fraction of the substances you do, I'd be in critical condition within minutes. We have to be extremely careful about what we eat, what we breathe, even what environments we enter." She gestured at him. "But your body thrives in conditions that should be deadly." Adrian sipped his coffee again. "I mean, it's not like we're immortal. Humans have limits too." Kalari gave him a skeptical look. "Do you?" "Because from what I'm reading, your species doesn't just survive hardships. You become stronger from them. Your immune system learns from every infection. Your muscles repair stronger after damage. And now I find out you casually drink what should be classified as a controlled substance without consequences." Adrian smirked. "Yeah, we're kinda stubborn like that." Kalari let out a slow breath. "Stubborn isn't the word I'd use. Reckless, terrifying, maybe even unnatural." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Unnatural. We're just built different." Kalari wasn't sure whether to be impressed or deeply unsettled. The Zetheri had always viewed humans as physically weak, relying on technology to keep up with the greater galactic species. But if what she was learning was true, maybe humanity wasn't weak at all. Maybe they were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and nobody had realized it yet. Kalari sat at the sleek metal table in the research station, her long fingers tapping rhythmically against the surface. Her mind was racing, unable to focus on her usual work. Across from her, Dr. Adrian Voss sat comfortably, sipping another mug of his toxic morning ritual, looking utterly relaxed. It had been hours since she first witnessed him drinking the so-called coffee, but she still couldn't shake her unease. She had known humans were different. Every species in the galaxy did. But until now, she had thought of them as merely adaptable, good at using technology to survive harsh environments. Now she was beginning to suspect they weren't just adaptable, they were biological outliers. "Adrian," she said slowly, her voice unusually serious, "I need to understand something. Just how much can your species survive?" Adrian raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Kaluri activated her holo tablet and pulled up a chart displaying the biological tolerances of various species across the galaxy. She pointed at the Z-theory data. My people require a precisely controlled diet and environment. Our food is purified. Our air is filtered, and even slight contaminants can send us into biological shock. Our bodies have no tolerance for toxins because we never needed to develop one. She swiped her fingers, scrolling through the list of species. The Threxians can endure extreme gravitational forces because they evolved on a super-dense planet. The Varnak have acid-resistant biology because they grew up in sulfuric rain. Each species has some specific adaptation that helps them survive in their native worlds. She stopped at humans. Their biological data was chaotic. Your species, she continued, her voice tightening, should not exist. Adrian laughed. Gee, thanks. I'm serious, Kaluri insisted. You don't have a single extreme specialization like the others. Instead, your bodies seem to have a little bit of everything. You resist poisons, you heal rapidly, you adapt to different climates, and you even survive wounds that should be fatal. This isn't normal. Adrian leaned back in his chair, setting down his mug. Well, I guess Earth is just a rough place to grow up. Kaluri crossed her arms. How rough? Adrian thought for a moment, then grinned. Well, first off, our entire planet is constantly trying to kill us. Kaluri's eyes widened. Explain. Adrian lifted a finger. 1. Our weather is insane. We got deserts that hit deadly temperatures and frozen wastelands where people can die in minutes. We have storms that can level cities and oceans filled with giant, man-eating predators. He lifted a second finger. 2. Our diseases are brutal. We don't just get sick. We build immunity by surviving illnesses. A human body learns from infections and becomes stronger over time. Most alien species don't work that way. Kaluri's fingers twitched, but Adrian wasn't done. He held up a third finger. 3. Our own planet tried to kill us multiple times. Supervolcanoes, asteroid impacts, ice ages, global plagues. We survived them all. We're kinda stubborn like that. Kaluri stared at him, her mind reeling. And despite all that, you thrive. Yep, Adrian said proudly, taking another sip of coffee. She sat back, trying to process this. Most species were defined by their limitations, where they could live, what they could eat, what they had to avoid. But humans, they seemed to break the rules of biology itself. Kaluri slowly shook her head. I don't understand how you aren't considered the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Adrian grinned. Maybe they just haven't figured it out yet. She wasn't sure whether to laugh or feel deeply concerned. Kaluri could not stop thinking about it. Every time she tried to focus on her research, her mind kept circling back to one unsettling thought. Humans were not normal. She sat across from Adrian in the research station's common area, watching him with quiet fascination. He was busy typing on his data console, completely unaware of how much his very existence was disturbing her. A species that drank toxins, survived lethal environments, and adapted to anything. It defied everything she had been taught about biology. Finally, she couldn't hold it in anymore. Adrian, she said, folding her arms, I have another question. He didn't look up. Hit me. She hesitated, then leaned forward. You've told me about how humans survive. But I've been reading more about your history, and I need to know something. He finally glanced up, raising an eyebrow. Yeah. Kaluri's mandibles twitched. Are humans designed for war? Adrian blinked, then gave a slow chuckle. I wouldn't say designed, but, well, we're definitely good at it. She exhaled sharply. I knew it. The more I study human biology, the more I realize that your species isn't just built to survive. You're built to fight. Adrian shrugged. I guess. It's not like we go looking for fights, but history hasn't exactly been peaceful. Kaleri activated her holo tablet, swiping through various data points. Every species has some form of natural defense, but humans, you have so many. She pointed at the display. First, your bodies are ridiculously durable. You can survive broken bones, deep cuts, even lost limbs, and still keep fighting. Most species would go into immediate shock and die. Adrian tilted his head. Okay, yeah, fair point. Kaleri tapped the screen again. Second, your reaction speed is incredible. Your eyes are designed to track fast-moving objects, and your brains process threats almost instantly. That's why you're so good at combat, isn't it? Adrian smirked. Well, I won't brag, but yeah, we're pretty quick. Kaleri's bioluminescent tendrils pulsed in frustration. And then there's your endurance. Adrian, most species can only exert themselves for short bursts before exhaustion sets in. But humans, you can run for hours without stopping. You can keep fighting long after your muscles should fail. Your bodies repair damage faster than almost anything I've ever seen. Adrian finally set his console down. Look, Kaleri, you're not wrong. Humans have a lot of advantages when it comes to, well, staying alive. We evolved that way because Earth was a nightmare. Everything was either trying to eat us, poison us, or crush us. So yeah, we got good at running, fighting, and figuring out how to win. Kaleri narrowed her eyes. But why? Most species evolved to avoid conflict, not charge straight into it. Adrian sighed and leaned back in his chair. Because for most of human history, we didn't have claws or fangs. We weren't the fastest. We weren't the strongest. If we wanted to survive, we had to be smarter. We had to work together, outthink our enemies, and never, ever give up. Kaleri stared at him. And that's why your species is dangerous. You aren't the best at any one thing, but you're good enough at everything. You endure. You adapt. You refuse to die. Adrian smiled. Now you're getting it. Kaleri wasn't sure if she should feel relieved or terrified. Kaleri had always believed that logic ruled the universe. Every species followed a pattern. Biological limitations determined their strengths, weaknesses, and survival strategies. But after spending time with Adrian Voss, she was realizing something unsettling. Humans didn't follow the rules. She watched as Adrian jogged around the research station's perimeter, his breathing steady, his movements controlled. His boots crunched against the rocky surface of the barren moon they were stationed on. The artificial gravity was only 0.7 standard, yet he moved as if he were still on his home planet. Kaleri crossed her arms, her bioluminescent tendrils shifting in confusion. Adrian, what are you doing? He slowed to a stop, wiping sweat from his forehead. Morning workout. Kaleri frowned. You are deliberately exhausting yourself. Adrian laughed. That's kind of the point. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. You mean to tell me that after a full day of work, and without being in any immediate danger, you choose to push your body to its limits? Adrian stretched his arms. Yeah. Exercise keeps us strong, builds endurance, keeps the heart healthy, and, he grinned, honestly, it just feels good. Kaleri's silver-blue skin darkened with confusion. I do not understand. Most species rest when not in danger. Adrian grabbed his water bottle and took a long sip before shrugging. Rest is good, sure. But if we stop moving, we get weaker. That's why humans train constantly, even when we don't have to. Kaleri's mandibles twitched as she pulled out her holo tablet and quickly scrolled through various biological records. This is ridiculous, she muttered. Muscle tissue should be preserved, not intentionally damaged. She looked up at him. I read about your species, so-called training. You willingly put yourselves through pain. Why? Adrian smirked. Because pain means progress. When our muscles tear, they grow back stronger. When we push ourselves past exhaustion, we build endurance. The more we suffer now, the easier things become later. Kaleri stared at him in shock. You are telling me that humans become stronger by breaking themselves? Pretty much, Adrian said with a shrug. She exhaled sharply, rubbing her temples. This explains so much. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Like what? Kaleri gestured toward him. Why humans refuse to stop. Why your species keeps pushing forward even when it makes no sense. You don't just survive hardship, you seek it out. You train, you endure, and you adapt to things no other species would even attempt. Adrian chuckled. Well, yeah. I mean, how else would we get better? Kaleri's fingers tightened around her holo tablet. But not everything needs to be a challenge, Adrian. Most intelligent species avoid unnecessary pain. They advance through science, technology, and strategy, not by punishing themselves. Adrian took another sip of water. That's where humans are different. We believe in struggle. We believe in earning strength. That's how we tamed our planet, built civilizations, and even got to the stars. Kaleri's mind raced. She had never met a species that thought this way. Most advanced civilizations viewed struggle as something to be avoided, an obstacle to be overcome with intelligence. But humans, they embraced it. Your species, Kaleri muttered, still deep in thought. You never stop improving, do you? Adrian grinned. Not if we can help it. Kaleri wasn't sure whether to be impressed or horrified. But one thing was certain. The rest of the galaxy had no idea what kind of monsters they had let in. Kaleri sat in the dim glow of the research station's control room, her silver-blue skin reflecting the soft light of the holo displays. She was supposed to be analyzing planetary mineral samples, but instead, she found herself staring at her notes on human physiology. Endurance beyond logical limits, resistance to poisons, adaptability in extreme environments, a tendency to seek out struggle rather than avoid it. The more she studied, the more she felt a strange mix of awe and unease. She looked across the room where Adrian Voss was sitting at the communication terminal, casually drinking his steaming mug of liquid poison, or as he called it, coffee. He looked relaxed, completely at ease, as if nothing in the universe could shake him. Kaleri knew better now. Humans did not fear like other species. They could be cautious, yes, and they could recognize danger, but fear didn't stop them. In fact, sometimes, it seemed to drive them forward. She finally spoke. Adrian. He looked up. What's up? Kaleri hesitated, her mandibles twitching in thought. Have humans ever been afraid of another species? Adrian raised an eyebrow. Afraid? Sure, we get scared all the time. No, Kaleri said firmly. I mean truly afraid. The way most species fear you. Adrian paused for a moment, setting his mug down. Huh. He rubbed his chin, thinking. Well, there have been times in history when we thought some alien species might be dangerous, sure. But outright fear. Like the way you're talking about. He shook his head. Not really. Kaleri's fingers tightened around her holo tablet. Why not? Adrian leaned back in his chair, considering his words. I think it's because we've been alone for so long. Before we met any alien species, the only threats we had were ourselves and our planet. So when we finally reached the stars, we didn't see the galaxy as something to be afraid of. We saw it as a challenge. Kaleri's glowing eyes narrowed. You see everything as a challenge. Adrian grinned. Yeah, pretty much. She sighed, shaking her head. This is why other species fear you. Adrian shrugged. Hey, we're not that bad. We don't go around picking fights for no reason. Kaleri looked down at her notes. That's the terrifying part, Adrian. You don't have to. The galaxy isn't afraid of you because you are aggressive. They are afraid because you won't stop. No matter the obstacle, no matter the enemy, humans keep going. Adrian chuckled. Well, we do like winning. Kaleri exhaled sharply. This is not a joke. Do you realize how many civilizations throughout history have been conquered by species that simply had better technology or stronger biology. Humans, you don't need to be the strongest or the most advanced. You only need time. Given enough time, you will adapt, overcome, and eventually dominate. Adrian leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. Kalari, are you worried about humans taking over the galaxy? She looked him directly in the eyes. I think it is only a matter of time before the rest of the galaxy realizes the truth. You are not predators in the traditional sense, but you are something just as dangerous. You are relentless. Adrian took another sip of coffee and smirked. Well, guess we'll just have to prove we're the good guys, huh? Kalari wasn't so sure, because deep down she knew history was written by those who refused to fall. And humans, they never fall. Kalari had read about human endurance, resilience, and adaptability. She had studied the way their bodies could withstand injury, their minds could handle stress, and their spirit refused to break. But knowing it in theory was one thing. Seeing it in action was something else entirely. The alarm blared through the research station, a shrill, piercing sound that sent a wave of panic through Kalari's nerves. She spun toward the central holo display, her bioluminescent tendrils flickering wildly. Incoming impact detected. The warning flashed red on the screen. A meteor storm. Uncharted. Unexpected. The station's outer sensors had failed to detect it in time, and now it was too late to evacuate. The impact would hit within minutes. Kalari turned to Adrian, expecting to see panic on his face. Instead, he was already moving. Seal the inner doors, he ordered, running toward the emergency control panel. His fingers flew over the interface, locking down non-essential sections of the station. Reinforce the pressure shields. We need to absorb the impact. Kalari forced herself to focus, snapping out of her shock. How was he so calm? Every instinct in her body screamed to flee, to hide, to escape. But Adrian, he was acting like this was just another problem to solve. The shields aren't strong enough to handle direct hits, she said quickly, scanning the system diagnostics. We need to divert more power. Then divert it. Adrian shouted. We don't have time to debate. She hesitated only for a second before her hands moved across the controls, redirecting auxiliary power. The first impact struck. The entire station shook violently, the metal walls groaning under the pressure. Kalari felt her legs buckle, but Adrian grabbed her arm, steadying her. His grip was strong, unshaken. Stay with me, he said. Another impact, then another. The sound of the meteors slamming into the outer hull was deafening. Structural integrity dropping. Kalari called out. Hold the line. Adrian shouted back. She turned to him, unable to hide her disbelief. Hold the line. Adrian, we are inside a collapsing station. We are not soldiers in battle. Same principle, he said, gritting his teeth. We don't run. We reinforce, adapt, and survive. The ground trembled beneath them. Another warning flashed on the holoscreen. Critical breach in Section 3. We're losing air, Kalari shouted. We need to seal it. Adrian was already moving. He grabbed a heavy repair kit from the wall and sprinted toward the breach. Kalari watched in shock as he pried open a maintenance panel, exposing the emergency seal controls. Sparks flew as he manually bypassed the failing system. Kalari had seen creatures fight for survival before, but this was something different. Adrian wasn't just surviving. He was actively resisting death. With one final press, the emergency bulkhead slammed shut, sealing the breach just as another impact rocked the station. Then, silence. The shaking stopped. The impacts ceased. The storm had passed. Kalari's breath was ragged as she stared at the control panel. The station was damaged, but still intact. They had survived. She turned to Adrian. He was leaning against the wall, breathing heavily, a tired grin on his face. Told you, he said. Hold the line. Kaleri sank to the floor, her heart still racing. I do not understand how you can be so calm in the face of death. Adrian chuckled. It's not about being calm. It's about knowing that panic won't fix anything. You push through. You survive. That's just what we do. Kaleri looked at him, truly looked at him, and understood. Humans did not just endure hardship. They conquered it. Kaleri sat on the edge of the observation deck, staring out at the cold void of space. The station was still, its lights flickering slightly from the damage caused by the meteor storm. The repairs were coming along, but there was something gnawing at her that the engineering couldn't fix. Adrian had saved them all. He had kept calm, kept moving, and had made sure they didn't fall apart when everything around them seemed to be on the brink of destruction. He had shown her the power of human resilience, but there was more to it than that. Kaleri's fingers twitched as she recalled their last conversation, the one they'd had in the aftermath of the storm. You humans, you always push forward, even when there's no reason to, she had said. Adrian had grinned and replied, because we don't stop. Ever. But now, alone in the quiet of the station, the truth was beginning to settle in Kaleri's mind. There was something deeper about humans, something that went beyond survival. They weren't just driven by a desire to stay alive. It was more than that. Adrian wasn't afraid of the unknown, because he expected it. He didn't fear the challenges of the universe, because to him, those challenges were opportunities. Opportunities to grow, to adapt, to evolve. She closed her eyes, trying to push the thoughts away. She had known her own species to be cautious, to study and measure before taking risks. But humans? They dove into the unknown, knowing they might fail. They never let the unknown scare them. They embraced it. Why do you do it, Adrian? She whispered, though she knew he couldn't hear her. Why did humans keep fighting, even when they had no guarantees of success? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned to see Adrian standing at the door, his face tired but his eyes still gleaming with that familiar, unshakable confidence. Hey, he said, offering a slight grin. Mind if I join you? Kaleri gestured for him to sit, her mind still racing. How are the repairs going? She asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Slow, Adrian replied, sitting down beside her. But we'll get there. We always do. Kaleri couldn't help herself. She turned to face him, her glowing eyes filled with both curiosity and something else, a growing unease. Adrian, she started slowly, her voice quieter than usual. Why don't you ever seem scared? Even when we're on the edge of destruction, you always seem so sure that we will survive. Adrian's eyes flickered with a brief moment of surprise before he gave a soft laugh. Because I know we can. Kaleri frowned, not fully satisfied with his answer. But what if you don't make it? What if the next challenge is too big to overcome? His expression softened, and for the first time, Kaleri saw a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. That's the thing, Kaleri. We don't know if we'll make it, but we try. And we try again, even if we fail the first time. Humans are built for second chances. We don't let one failure stop us. Kaleri blinked, considering his words. She had always seen life as a series of calculated decisions, avoiding risk, choosing the safest path. But Adrian was showing her a different way, a way that involved embracing the uncertainty of life, pushing forward even when the outcome was unclear. What if you fail again and again? She asked quietly. Adrian gave her a knowing smile. Then we keep failing, and we keep learning. It's how we grow. Kaleri stared at him, her mind racing. She couldn't understand it. To her, it felt like madness. But somehow, it was working. Humans had faced extinction countless times, and yet they were still here. They had risen from every setback, every failure. She had always thought that life was about avoiding the worst, surviving the danger. But Adrian's words were slowly changing her view. Humans thrived not because they avoided failure, but because they kept going, no matter what. For the first time, Kaleri felt a strange, new respect for the human species. She wasn't sure if she fully understood them yet, but there was something about Adrian's resolve, his unwavering belief that failure was simply part of the process, that was beginning to make sense. Humans were more than just survivors. They were fighters. And that, Kaleri realized, was something worth understanding. The research station had finally recovered. The hull was patched, the systems were functioning again, and the crew had returned to their routines. But for Kaleri, things had changed. The constant hum of the station, the software of machinery, was no longer just background noise. Her thoughts were often far away now, drifting through the vast emptiness of space, pondering everything Adrian had shown her. He had been right about one thing. Humans didn't wait for certainty. They didn't wait for all the answers. They acted, and even when they failed, they learned. She watched Adrian from across the room as he worked on recalibrating the station's communication array. He moved with a purpose, a quiet energy that seemed to come from deep inside him. He wasn't just fixing the station because it was necessary. No, there was something more. He was fixing it because it was possible. "You're really something," Kaleri said quietly, more to herself than to him. Adrian looked up, a grin spreading across his face. "What's that?" "Something good, I hope." Kaleri shook her head, her tendrils shifting with a mix of admiration and confusion. "I just don't understand how you can be so certain, so sure that whatever happens, it will work out." Adrian shrugged, his gaze never leaving his work. "It's not about being certain. It's about doing. The rest follows." Kaleri blinked, still processing his words. The simplicity of his philosophy was what made it so powerful. It wasn't about being the strongest, the smartest, or the most prepared. It was about taking action, even when the future was uncertain, even when failure was staring you in the face. Humans don't fear what's unknown, do they? Kaleri mused, more to herself than to Adrian. "No," Adrian replied, still focused on his task. "We don't fear the unknown because we don't believe it's something to be afraid of. It's just something we haven't figured out yet, and when we do, it's just another challenge to conquer." Kaleri let out a small laugh, feeling a strange sense of warmth fill her chest. "I've spent my entire life avoiding the unknown. But now, I think I'm beginning to see it differently." Adrian glanced up at her, his eyes lighting up with understanding. "You're starting to get it, huh?" Kaleri smiled, a genuine smile that felt unfamiliar but comforting. "Maybe. I think I'm starting to understand why you humans never stop. You never see obstacles as something to avoid. You see them as opportunities to grow stronger." "Exactly," Adrian said with a grin. "We take the risks because that's how we move forward. Even when we fall, we learn. And when we learn, we become better." Kaleri thought about all the other species she had encountered in her travels. They were all cautious, careful, calculating. They never risked anything unless they were certain of the outcome. But humans, they were the complete opposite. They moved forward without guarantees, trusting that their persistence would shape the future, no matter how uncertain. For the first time, Kaleri found herself feeling something she had never expected. Hope. Hope in the unknown. Hope in the possibility of what could be. And perhaps more surprisingly, she found herself feeling a deep respect for Adrian and his species. They were different from her kind, different from every species she had ever studied. But in that difference, Kaleri could see something unique, something that might change the galaxy. "You know," Kaleri said, her voice thoughtful, "humans might just be the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Adrian looked up from his work, raising an eyebrow. "Dangerous? How do you figure?" "Not because of your strength or your technology," Kaleri replied, her gaze steady. "But because you don't stop. You don't give up, no matter the challenge. And in that, you have the power to reshape the future, whatever that future may be." Adrian smiled, a quiet pride in his eyes. "Well, we'll see, won't we? The future's unwritten. But if we keep moving, we'll make it something worth having. Kaleri nodded, the weight of his words settling over her. The future, as uncertain as it was theirs to create. And no matter what the universe threw at them, humans would face it head-on. Because humans, Kaleri now understood, were not just survivors. They were builders. Builders of futures, builders of legacies, builders of galaxies. And the galaxy had never faced anything like them.